In this film, Kemal Tahir is at your age. Do you want to be friends with him? Friends. This is Kemal Tahir. My real name is Ismail Kemalettin. I'm a novelist who has brought many works to Turkish literature. Would you like to know me better? My father is Tahir Bey and my mother is Nuriye Hanım. My father was a naval officer. Later, he entered the palace and he became the assistant of Sultan Abdülhamit II. My mother also worked at the palace as the assistant of Abdülhamit's daughter, Naile Sultan. My mother and father were both very religious people. My father was a hard-working and honest man. The Sultan loved my father very much. That's why he gifted him a house in Istanbul. I was born in that house in 1910. This was a large and old mansion. It had a huge garden. I used to play in this garden with my brother. My brother and I used to do our homework as soon as we got back home from school. My uncle, who lived with us, used to check our notebooks. When he saw that we were doing our homework, he would give us pocket money. I loved reading. I used to buy books with the pocket money my uncle gave me and read them to my brother. I especially liked adventure novels. When the war broke out, we had to leave Istanbul. Due to my father's military service, I went to primary school in different cities. My childhood coincided with the period of the national struggle. Even though I was 8 or 10 years old, I also participated in this struggle. I was helping to transport materials to Anatolia. When the war was over, we returned to Istanbul. My father made a living by working as a carpenter. After a while, I enrolled at Galatasaray High School. Here, I became more interested in literature. During these years, my biggest goal was to become a good poet. The language of instruction at Galatasaray High School was French. Over time, I began to read the works of great French novelists. I was not only interested in literature, but also in historical and social issues. I was particularly interested in Ottoman history. After my mother's death, I left Galatasaray High School and started working for a lawyer. Then I went to Zonguldak. I worked as a civil servant in the coal mines and got to know the miners closely. When I returned to Istanbul, I found a job at a newspaper. The profession of journalism has also influenced my writing life. I looked at the world not only as a writer, but also as a journalist. By the way, I met our famous poet Nazım Hikmet. Meeting him had a profound effect on my thinking. I published my first poem in 1931. After that, I wrote articles on social issues in various newspapers and magazines. I translated some French novels into our language. Among them were detective novels. After these translations attracted attention, I started to write detective novels. I held various positions in many magazines and newspapers. I was now one of the most known journalists in Istanbul. Besides, we were publishing a literary magazine called Passage with my close friend. A long period of my life was spent in different cities of Anatolia for various reasons. Thus, I got to know the Anatolian people. I made a lot of observations for the novels I was planning to write. In 1940, I decided to become a novelist. Nazım Hikmet had a great contribution in making this decision. He often told me to write novels. In those years, the most talked about subject in literary circles was village novel. In order to improve myself on this subject, I started to study world novels. After my long studies, I published my first novel titled Sağırdere in 1955. The contribution of this novel, Karduman, was published in 1957. In these novels, I described the problems of the peasants. In the novels I wrote after 1960, I dealt with Ottoman Turkish history issues. These works of mine attracted the attention of many people and were discussed a lot. One of the most important works is called as Devlet Ana. Here I explained the establishment of the Ottoman state. I won the Turkish Language Association Novel Award with this work. I am known as one of the most important novelists in Turkish literature. The issues that I dealt with in my novels are still discussed. I have written over 20 novels. My books have been made into movies by famous directors. Dear children, understanding today is possible by knowing our history well. Nations who know their history well can easily solve the problems they will encounter. This requires a lot of reading and research. Listening to different opinions also enriches our thoughts. I hope my life story has been a guide for you. I worked hard, produced a lot. If you work hard, there's nothing you cannot achieve.